Welcome back, children. Now, this particular uh, slideshow and video is about the literary devices that are used in The Boy Who Broke the Bank. Now, the question arises, what are literary devices, right? So, literary devices are nothing but devices, different techniques used by any poet or any writer to enhance the writing, to reach out to the readers, and help the readers to understand the work that they have done and appreciate the work and make it look very beautiful and more appealing. Okay, so let's read out what it says. Literary devices are usually a word or phrases in literary texts that writers employ to achieve not merely artistic ends but also readers a greater understanding and appreciation of their literary works. Okay, so it is just not to enhance or not to add an artistic appeal to the writing, but also help the reader to have a greater understanding and appreciate their literary works. Now, literary devices are techniques that writers use to create a special and pointed effect in their writing, to convey information, or to help readers understand their writing on a deeper level. Often, literary devices are used in writing for emphasis or clarity. Many of the literary devices you must be knowing, and many we will discuss as in when we go through the text or any chapter or any poem. If you remember, in Tumai of the Elephant we had discussed about alliteration, right? So in every most of the literature work, be it a poem or be it a writing prose, you will find some of the literary devices used by the writer. But we can't, there are many, plenty and plethora of literary devices, but we can't discuss all. It entirely depends on the understanding and the maturity of the kids. Like you are in sixth right now, so we won't be discussing, we will be discussing a few literary devices maybe that will match up your maturity levels, and later on, as in when you grow up and you reach out to other classes, at that time you learn more. Okay, so some examples are metaphor, simile, alliteration, hyperbole, allegory. Okay, so this is literary devices. Now in the text or in this chapter, what all which all literary devices are used, that we are going to discuss. Okay, so the first literary device that we are going to use is imagery. That we are going to discuss, which is used in the textbook or in your chapter, The Boy Who Broke the Bank, is imagery. Now, what is an imagery? Imagery actually is again a literary device that enhances all your senses. There are five senses that we all have. So it gives a kind of a experience to your senses. Okay, like when suppose you are reading something, or there is a particular writing or particular line, or maybe two or three lines which gives a different experience to your eyes or your imagination. You can actually imagine that thing in front of you or in your mind, then that is imagery, that is giving an experience to your eyes, which is a one of the five senses that you have, right? Sometimes it gives different experience to your mouth or your tongue or your taste buds. Okay, so there are different kinds of imagery, and the main aim of the imagery is to improve the experience of the reader through their senses. Okay, now let us see the example. Now before I start the example, let us read out the definition of imagery. Imagery means to use figurative language to represent objects, actions and ideas in such a way that it appeals to our physical senses. So as I told you all, imagery is nothing but when the writer intends to write in such a way that the writer represent any object or action or any idea that he wants to convey, he or she tries to appeal our physical senses. Imagery is a language used by poets, novelists, and other writers to create images in the mind of the reader. Imagery includes figurative and metaphorical language to improve the reader's experience through their senses. So, figurative language is that only. Figurative and metaphorical language. Figurative is wherein figure of speech is implied. Okay, not literal but figurative. Okay. Now, example 1. Imagery using visuals. Okay, so the imagery that uses visuals will give an experience to our eyes, right, or imagination. Now if you read out this example, the night was black as ever, but bright stars lit up the sky in beautiful and varied constellations which were sprinkled across the astronomical landscape. So how beautifully the writer has written it, and I can actually imagine, when you read it, you can actually imagine the thing, right? So in this example, the experience of the night sky is described in depth with color, shape and pattern. So you can actually imagine the entire thing in your mind, right? So language that appeals to the senses, sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell is imagery. Um, Now, second example, imagery using sound. First, it was actually giving a different experience to your eyes. Now it is sound. Just read it. Silence was broken by the peal of piano keys as Shannon began practicing her concerto. So here, actually, you can imagine Shannon practicing and how the sound would be. You know, because it was pin drop silence, it was broken by the piano keys when Shannon started or began the practice, right? So the auditory image actually breaks the silence with the beautiful sound of the piano keys, and you can actually imagine and you can actually feel a kind of an experience in your earbuds, right? Next is imagery using scent. She smelled the scent of sweet hibiscus wafting through the air. Its tropical smell, a reminder that she was on vacation in a beautiful place. Now again, the scent of hibiscus and the way it has been described gives a tinkling or a different kind of experience to your nose, right, or your nasal sense, right? So the scent of hibiscus helps describe a scene which is relaxing, warm and welcoming. You can actually, yes, you can actually imagine and you can actually feel that the sweet sense of hibiscus and how it has been described, that it has a tropical smell and it's a reminder that she was on a vacation, a beautiful place. So the place is actually beautiful and the scent is actually enhancing it, right? Now imagery using taste. The candy melted in her mouth, and swirls of bittersweet chocolate and slightly sweet but salty caramel blended together on her tongue. Again, did this actually my mouth is full of water now, because it's really mouth watering when you actually read this, right? So here again the reader has tried to play with the the taste buds of yours, or the that sense of yours, right, the tongue. Thanks to an in-depth description of the candy's various flavors, the reader can almost experience the deliciousness directly, right? If someone, it happens to me all the time, you know, if someone is talking about pani puri or maybe something that is sour or khatta to me, I get that pani in my mouth already, right? That's very mouth watering to me. So that happens, you know, and that's how you try to that's how imagery is used, and that's how the poets and the novelists and the writers have, you know, tried to bring that aesthetic sense to the writing. Okay, now we'll move forward. Okay, now let us see the fifth kind of imagery. Four senses imagery we have already done. We have done visual, audio, taste, related to taste, related to scent, right? Now next is imagery using touch, the tactile, right? After the long run, he collapsed in the grass with tired and burning muscles. The grass tickled his skin and sweat cooled on his brow. Now here again you can actually feel it, how the cool grass would have given a very cool and soothing effect to the already sweating muscles of the person, right? So imagery is used to describe the feeling of strained muscles, grasses tickle and sweat cooling on screen. Yes, and how tired the muscles were and how it was feeling very relaxed after um, the grass tickled the skin, right? Okay, now we'll look for the imagery that is used in the chapter. I hope you're clear with all the kinds of imagery that we've talked so far and what is imagery in particular, right? So now let's see in the chapter how Ruskin Bond has attempted to enhance our senses. Okay. He used the small broom hurriedly and carelessly, and the dust, after rising in a cloud above his head, settled down again on the steps. Can you all think of this? When was this line used? Yes, very good. It is actually at the beginning of the chapter, if you remember, when Nathu was sweeping, right? So at this time, Ruskin Bond particularly used these lines, or this line, actually it's one line, wherein an imagery is created. It's a visual imagery. If you try to, it has been described such beautifully. He could have easily written yeah, that Nathu was sweeping the floor or the stairs, but no, he used imagery to bring a artistic and aesthetic sense to the writing, of course. And second, it also enhances or gives a different or unique experience to our imagination, right? So actually now when I read these lines, I can imagine Nathu sweeping, right? So he used the small broom hurriedly and carelessly. So you can imagine how he must be sweeping. And the dust, after rising in a cloud above his head, settled down again on the steps. So here also you can imagine how the dust, while you actually clean, not your maybe house, but maybe outside your house where it's actually very dirty and there's a lot of dust, when you actually clean out, you might have seen it also when the housekeeping staff, they clean it. What happens if it's very dusty? What happens, the dust actually, it rises first and you can actually see it from a distance, right? And it then settles down. So this is what, how, and Ruskin Bond has created imagery over here, and it's so beautifully explained.